Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for Fighting Invisibility, going from 1 in a billion to number 1 in a billion. Today, we're going to learn how to optimize our LinkedIn profiles to increase exposure and get you to your job search goal. And this is all led by Kevin D. Turner, the managing partner at TNT Brand Specialist LLC. No, I got that wrong. The Brand Strategist LLC. Kevin eliminates personal branding and helps job seekers go from bland to land with proven tools and strategies. A LinkedIn profile optimizer, trainer, career coach, and speaker, Kevin has optimized more than 5,000 LinkedIn profiles and trained more than 15,000 people in LinkedIn best practices. And I highly encourage everyone to connect with Kevin on LinkedIn and follow his YouTube channel. And I'll put information about that in the chat and in the follow-up email. And I once again want to thank the Friends of the Library for sponsoring today's program and almost all of our programs. So all nearly 50 of us or so who are watching live and the many more that will watch the recording, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Kevin for joining us here today. And Kevin, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Robert, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And hopefully we'll talk about some things you don't hear about everywhere. And, that's the purpose of today. I hope most leave with at least 5 or 6 ahas. And that's important to me. So let me know if I don't. Really excited to be here. And, my life, I've actually had 5 pivots in my career. Some by choice, some forced upon me, right? Like most of us. And it was always pulled together and transitioned through 2 things. And that was really kind of figuring out, what is my brand? Where am I going? What do I want to do next? How do you bring that into the branding of you, right? And then networking was another huge component. Who do I know? Who can I talk to? Who can get me in front of other people? Who can give me insights, right? Who can be my internal champion? Figuring out things like that. I'm not opposed to online applications. I actually landed 2 jobs that way. So, I know that there's ways of doing all this stuff. We just need to do it smarter and understand that there's a lot of digital processing. Sometimes we look at things in a very simplistic way, especially LinkedIn, right? We look at that, everybody thinks it's a social good site. Well, it's much more than that. And that's kind of what we're going to dive into today. So I'm gonna jump right in. Our title here is changing from being 1 in a billion to number 1 in a billion. And if you actually go onto LinkedIn, if you did, this is the world's simplest Boolean search here. I'm just going to put an X. I'm going to hit people, and there is LinkedIn's today's actual membership. So it's not only a billion, it's 1,070,000,000. That's incredible. And if you think about LinkedIn, it is the world's largest database of resumes. That's what your profile basically is. It is a resume, no matter how you want to look at it. It may not look exactly like your resume, and it probably shouldn't, but that's what it is. It's got your information there. It's got your connectivity there. It's got what you bring to the table, hopefully, right, in that profile. And that's a big component of LinkedIn. It is, again, this world's largest database of resumes. Now, if you're in a database with 1 billion plus other people, right, if you don't fit database best practices, it's really hard to find. So I want you to think about yourself. Let's say, Robert, you run the Library of Congress, right? And the Library of Congress has 1 billion books in it. And I show up one day and I bring my book in there and I put my own little numbers on there, right? My own Dewey Decimal System that I made up. I stick it on the shelf and say, Robert, can you go get my book? Would you be able to retrieve it out of 1 billion books?
Well, thank you for the promotion, Kevin. I'd love to run the Library of Congress, but to your point, no, I would not. I would not be able to find that book.
That's what we do on LinkedIn. And so we're going to talk about, what does LinkedIn want from us? And that is complete data. It wants accurate data. It wants timely data. And it wants organized data. And we're going to talk about how we make that happen within LinkedIn, because if we can become their number one profile in getting these things right, we're going to be served up to everybody. We're going to be the book that the Library of Congress suggests everybody read when they come in, right? That's where we want to be. And so to me, that's fascinating to think about LinkedIn as a database. The other component about LinkedIn as a database or as a business, it is the only social media platform out there that has been wildly profitable since year one. Do you know it took Facebook 20 years to make $1? Now they're making a lot more than that now, but that's how long it took. These guys were making money within the first year. They were profitable. That's incredible as a business. And the way they did that is they looked at the whole process of giving us the opportunity to have kind of a platform where we could communicate and connect with each other, right? And basically that profile became the resume. And LinkedIn's first customer really was the recruiter. LinkedIn right now is a $17 billion company, again, wildly profitable. 65% of LinkedIn's annual revenue comes from that one customer, the recruiter. Now, if you're running a business, Robert, you've got your own store, right? And you've got one customer who comes in and they're 65% of your business. Where are you going to put their product? Wherever they can find it, right? You're going to put it up front. It's going to be on the best aisle, on the end cap, by the register, whatever it is, but you're going to take care of that customer because, again, they're doing 65% of your business. And that's really important to know on LinkedIn. You know, we get there. Some of us have premium accounts. Some of us have the freemium, the free ones. We're really not LinkedIn's customer. It's that recruiter. Now, there's also a small component on there for Sales Navigator, which is companies trying to find us. So if you really think about LinkedIn, it is what I call M2M business. Basically, they're selling members to other members. And to me, that's fascinating because we start thinking about that and we're like, well, we know we can find almost anybody we want to find on LinkedIn. And that's how LinkedIn is making that 65% of the revenue, is selling it. If you think about the way LinkedIn is designed, you can't see anybody on the platform, everybody on the platform, right? Without paying that kind of premium price. Getting into full recruiter is close to $900 a month. If you wanted that, that gives you everything that's on LinkedIn, no holds bars. You can get to everybody's profile. You can get contacts, you can get everything else, associations, all that stuff. It's all there. So to me, what's interesting is how do LinkedIn do that in the sense of how do they separate up that database? And that is based on what's called 6 degrees of separation. Are you familiar with the 6-degree separation concept?
I am somewhat, yes.
Yes. Basically, the simplest form is within 6 handshakes, you can meet anybody in the world. So if you wanted to meet somebody that was X handshakes away, right, you would start the introduction process. What is fascinating is the more first level handshakes you have, the faster you can get to that 6th handshake. Well, if LinkedIn built a database, put it on the internet, and you could get everybody without paying for anybody, would Recruiter exist? No, right? They lost their revenue. So what LinkedIn decided was you cannot see all 6 levels. You can only see to your 3rd level. That's your 1st level connections, your 2nd level connections. 3rd level is always kind of a mystery. You don't get all the info, but you can get there. That's why LinkedIn cut you off at 3. So they could either sell you to the other 3 or the other 3 to you. So to me, that is completely amazing that they figured out that business model very early on. And believe it or not, there is a patent that LinkedIn owns called 6 degrees of separation to build a social platform. They didn't invent it, but this went up for auction with a company that was going out of business, and they jumped on it. They beat Facebook out of getting this patent. Had Facebook gotten this patent without LinkedIn, LinkedIn wouldn't exist. Because this is how that database is built, and this is how you monetize that type of database. So that exists. You can scan that QR code if you ever geek enough to go and want to look at this stuff. That's where it is. I think it's kind of cool that they were very smart at the very beginning. Now, LinkedIn doesn't always tell you what they're doing. They're probably the worst at that, right? They never really kind of mention what's going on, why are they doing things. And so hopefully today, some of these insights will help you kind of figure out really what's going on. And then how do you take those and make it better for you? And that's key. The other thing is LinkedIn is constantly evolving. There's always a new LinkedIn feature. I track them with a group of people who help me kind of find them. And we publish those. No charge, they're on LinkedIn. That's one of my posts I do quite often. But LinkedIn does that to kind of stimulate and grow. They don't always tell us when those features are rolling out. Majority, I think it's 70% of the people actually have a new feature, but they don't find out for 60 to 90 days that they actually had it, right? So it can be a competitive advantage, but it doesn't change the purpose of LinkedIn, and that is really networking access. So the features are kind of like icing on the cupcake. Networking access is really what LinkedIn's about. Now, the thing is that the way LinkedIn introduces these features, it's in 5 waves. Those waves are randomized. So sometimes, Robert, you're going to be in the first wave and I'm not. I might be in the 4th wave, right? Sometimes I'll be in the first wave and you'll be in the 3rd. So what they've tried to do there is separate this up, because if a feature doesn't work, then they haven't annoyed either one of us too much, because they've kind of shared that process, right? So the next step is those waves are timed. They look at that and they say, we need X amount of days to see, does this work? What do we need to change and fix, right? And then get it back out there. Once that's done, then those waves actually increase in size. So the first few waves are small. They could be 100,000 people, small in comparison to a billion, right? So that's how they're going to test this process. Don't ever feel like they don't like me, right? Or they always like Bob because he gets the latest, and he doesn't. None of us do. But by working with a group of people and staying in tune, you can kind of figure these things out. You can get a little heads up. And then when it does show up on your profile, you can then use that feature to your advantage. And that's, I think, real key. It does kind of bring you back to when you're on LinkedIn. If you work within LinkedIn, right? Build a tribe, get people who help you, that you help them, more things can happen on LinkedIn. And so that, to me, that's really important. What I wanted to do is jump right into a kind of looking at my profile, right? In the sense of this might be your profile. I look at mine because I don't like pulling up anybody else's, because I never want to say anything bad, but I'm going to point out where we might go astray in some of these profile processes, right? So we definitely want to be top ranked with LinkedIn. The way LinkedIn works, in the sense if somebody's doing a search, right, they're going to do that result very much like Google does. Google's task was to go out and map the internet, right? Know everything that's out there. And then when I would come to the search engine and I typed in my search, Google's going to give me a list. And that list is ranked based on what they think is relevant to me based on my search query, right? Now, think about this in the sense of when you go to Google and you do a search, how often do you get past page 2 or 3 of the results? Most people don't. Most people will rather do a new search than go to page 4 and 5. Now, there are some people who will go to page 50, but they're rare. extremely rare. That's human nature, right? If we get a ranking and we look at the first 5, the first 10, the first 15, and they're like, these are phenomenal, I don't need to go any farther. That best choice might actually be page 30, but we never get there. LinkedIn is the same way. So if we want to be found by recruiters, by decision makers, by people who might want to connect with us, right? Who might want to network with us. If we want to be found, we want to be highly ranked. So when they do their search, we're at the top. We're not at page 50, we're at page 1 or 2, and they find us. And that's really critical in this process. So, that was kind of where we wanted to go in that sense. So we're on the profile now. Once we figure out how to get people here, we've got to impress them, right? Majority of the profiles out there are going to have what I call 3 shades of gray, kind of the default background banner, right? What does it say about you? And you think about this thing's running 24/7. Default says I accept the defaults, right? I don't really care. I didn't know you could change that. Definitely customize a background. Create one, make it something that's splashy when people get there so they get excited. You can put your contact in that background banner, which I do here. And the reason I do that is it increases connectivity. If somebody comes to this profile, they know exactly how to get to me. But they can't scrape this with what we call spam bots, right? Those are bots that run around the internet, stealing all the connections they can get so they can send you spam. This takes a human to write this down, or copy it. You can't copy it. It's a graphic. You could definitely move the graphic off, but you still can't put it into a database in any sense of ease that somebody who is running spam would do. So don't worry about that sense. If you don't want your phone number out there, you can get a very reasonable priced Google number. You can put that Google number in there. So when somebody calls that Google number, it's going to take a message from them, or it could forward to your cell. One or the other. You can do it either way, but that gets that number out there so they can make contact with you. So really important. Now, background banners, people are like, well, I'm not a graphics designer. And I get that. You might not even want to pay for a graphics designer because they're really expensive, but there are a lot of free options right now. Canva is one of the top ones. Canva is incredible. You can go in there. They have a whole section on just LinkedIn background banners. They actually have an AI area now that will ask you some questions, and it will create a banner based on those questions. Favorite colors, what industry do you want? What are you looking to do? It's going to even create the banner for you. So there's really no excuse not to have something customized that's attractive, that's going to bring people forward. And always think about this picture behind us. They always say a picture's worth 1,000 words. I see so many background banners like fly fishing in Montana. I've done that. It was incredible. But guess what happens when your boss can't find you and he opens up your LinkedIn profile and he sees your background banner, you fly fishing in Montana? He knows exactly where you are, or at least he's thinking that, right? So be careful with pictures. Know that they do have this huge definition behind them. People will interpret them. So be careful with those, but get some that are active. If you're older, I'm older, get something that's dynamic, something that's techie, right? Something that's bright. That, believe it or not, translates into I've got energy, right? Which is one of the first things they think about older people. They don't have the energy to do this. And tech, right? So you can bring those things together in an image, tell that story that people don't think about. Same thing with your profile photo, right? Right here. If you take that profile photo, you can do this on Canva, or you can do it in Mac. I'm sure you can do it in PC now. You can do profile background remove. What it does is it takes all the clutter out of the background. So they're just seeing you. And that's important because it's a networking site, right? And half the time we see that it's the size of a thumbnail. That's why they call it a thumbnail, right? Around LinkedIn. So you want it to be something that they can see and connect with. Now, I do something a little different. I am a big kind of privacy nut, even though I'm out on social media a lot. I don't want someone to grab my picture, move it off, put it onto their desktop, right? Make passports and driver's license out of it. So I do something that's called a one-ear shot, which basically means one ear is a little more seen than the other. Now, you don't have to be as cheeky as I am, right? You could just do it a little bit. 10% makes you safe. And so think about that in that sense. You want to be safe on LinkedIn. Just a 10% turn will make that so they can't grab it and then basically take some other information and create documents that could harm you in the long run, identity theft wise.
So
Background color.
Kevin, while we're on the profile photo, I did have a question from an anonymous attendee
Yes.
who asks, what can you use if you don't want to put your photo in your profile?
Technically with LinkedIn, there's only one other option, and that is to have like a caricature, right? Somebody painted you, paint by numbers. There's a lot of programs out there. So you could do something like that. You're not supposed to put logos in there, initials in there. You're not supposed to put, other things in there, a picture of your dog. But that's because LinkedIn wants this to be a networking site. And it's hard to network without it being your picture. So you got to get it as close as possible, right? Definitely focus on you, 65% of the picture. Background color, I use pure white on mine because it just fits really nicely with my background banner. I could have used it kind of a bright blue. The brighter, the less contrast in the sense of confusion in the background. Again, the more internet savvy you look, the younger you look, the more energetic you look. So these things do come into play. I think I've got somewhere up here. Oh, I thought I pulled one up here. No, maybe I didn't. You can actually pull in other, kind of elements to this. Let me just see if I can. There we go. There's a PDF with it. So you should be able to see that. If you're employed, bringing an employer into the background does a couple of things. It lowers red flags at work, right? And it also makes you look loyal. What every other company wants is a loyal employee. So believe it or not, they target these. So that's one way you can do it. Another way is just to kind of have that concept. Gary is big in this tech side, so he's got a very tech background. But look at it and know those colors are important. Try to make a connection in the process. Think of not just your brand on LinkedIn, but what are your brand colors? Because people will remember you if you tie that into your overall profile. And there's a lot of easy ways to do that. So, just kind of a thought. If anybody wants this, I can send it to them. These are ones I've just done over the years. I don't use Canva. I'm more graphic based, but you have these options. There's a lot of different ways you can make that creative and make it your own. Then you should. Back to our LinkedIn profile here. One of the top things you'll see on mine, I am verified. You can verify several different ways. If you're with a company that's in the program, you can verify by email. If not, in the US, we can verify using a driver's license and ClearMe. If you travel and you're getting through those TSA lines, you probably already have ClearMe. So it's really simple and easy. It does help people realize that you are a real person on LinkedIn. It does make you stand out. And LinkedIn, during recruiter search results, will put these profiles towards the top. So there's definitely an advantage into having that. Next thing you see
Kevin, can I interrupt
yes,
regarding the verification process? So we have a question from Mark, and I know you sort of said it's a relatively simple process to get verified, and you provide your driver's license or whatnot. But he actually has had issues a couple of times, and each time it failed. And when I searched this issue, other people report similar issues with failing to be verified. Do you have any hints or tips on how to be verified on LinkedIn?
There's a couple things, and there's some big improvements that they've made. One of them is nicknames, right? On LinkedIn, you can use nicknames. If your official name is William, but you go by Billy, they can extrapolate that. For a while, the verified was not making those leaps in the connectivity. Now it is. So if you, says William on your driver's license and you put Billy on the profile, they're going to now accept that. So the one area that they won't accept a change in name, even if it's somewhat associated, is your last name. Last name has to be the last name. First name, there's a little more flexibility. The other piece of that, in the sense that make sure that your driver's license matches the city that you say you live in, right? Because we've had people who are technically, let's say, living in California, but their driver's license says New York. Well, that's not a match, right? So they're trying to match the database to say you are who you say you are. So look if there's any kind of conflicts like that, and that it will probably solve it. One of those two will probably get that solved for you, and it should work much better now than it did 6 months ago and a year ago. So bear with me. I think it did take me 2 times to get mine done because I use D. That's my middle name technically, and on LinkedIn it's in my first name slot, but LinkedIn figured that out. So they're getting better, they're getting smarter, and that'll continue on.
Kevin, not a question, but how in the world did you get your LinkedIn profile URL to be president? You must have been a very early adopter to LinkedIn in order to score that.
It originally, it was when I was president and CEO of a education company. And I put that in, I thought, it actually did say, it said president and CEO. And I thought, you know what, I'll think about it at lunch. And I came back and that one was gone. So I became president. And it's stuck ever since. And people have told me, you should have your name up there. And I say, do you know how many searches I come up in for president of LinkedIn?
Huh?
So I'm never changing it. It's going to stay there. So when you do that customized URL, which is a smart thing because you get rid of the numbers and all that junk, definitely want to do it. That's right here, by the way, if anybody's trying to figure out how to do it, go in there and do something that is memorable, that looks nice on a resume too, right? Or at the bottom of an email signature. Great way to do it. If you can't get your name, often you can get something else at the end, like MBA, lawyer, whatever it is. You can get something, a designator at the end that you can put in there and allow you to keep your full name. So that's why they throw numbers on there so other people can have the same names. So think about this section right here, like a business card, right? One of the best things you can do on LinkedIn is look at other people's profiles. If you want a recruiter to pay attention to you, open that recruiter's profile up a couple times a week for about 2 weeks, and they will be reaching out to you. Because recruiters are curious cats, right? They want to know, what are you doing here? Do you either know somebody who's a fit? Are you a fit for something I'm doing? Do you have a potential lead that I could make money on? So go and use this. This is that business card. Anytime you're visiting somebody's profile, if they're premium or into recruiter, they're going to get this. Here's who looked at your profile today. And they do get curious. So this is a great little kind of digital business card. This statement here, critical that we get this right. You can use humor in here. You can use personality in here. Start out with something that sets you apart. Because if somebody's looking for me and they type in a title, maybe an industry, and they get this list, I'm going to stand out because mine's a little more unique. And that's what you want. You want people to say, wow, that works. There's one of my favorite expressions of myself is a little different could make all the difference, right? So try to look at that. What is it that you bring to the table? Bring it into the front. Don't go to that default position at company or ex-employee, XXX, right? Put something in there that's going to be attractive, that somebody's going to find you, and then go, I need to look at that to see. Now, I use personal branding. To me, what personal branding is kind of this inadvertent or even misguided demarketing of oneself. We build a profile, we throw everything we can in there, and we expect others to be able to figure it out, right? I want to be able to do everything. I'm going to put everything in here that I can do. And what ends up happening is nobody takes the time. Focus it, right? Brand a land in that sense, you'll get there faster. So don't use company title XX or anything like that, but use something that's definitely going to get them excited when they get there. So another thing, if you're using the what's called a pipe, which is that straight up and down line, it's really popular. Know that that is a database command. It means take this or that, but not necessarily both. So if you said, I'm a marketer and a salesperson, you're going to get one or the other. You don't get into both. So be careful. What I use is, this is actually an emoji. Looks like a little screwdriver, kind of goes with tools. There's a lot of different emojis out there that look like pipes. They give that nice, clean, visual, organized look, but they don't have a mess with the database. So just be aware if you're doing that, change it. Next piece down here, that's your location. I could have picked Granbury, Texas. Nobody would know where it was, right? Most people can say, I know where Dallas Fort Worth is, or I know of, right? Pick the larger metroplex. Bigger net, you're going to catch more fish. Small net, nobody will ever find you probably because they're looking at 2 towns over. So get that larger one in there. Also know that LinkedIn has changed this location database now 4 times in the last few years. About a year ago, this was Dallas/Fort Worth area. If I still had that on my profile and somebody was looking for somebody in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, they wouldn't find me at all. Recruiters are using the latest, so we got to make sure we update to the latest. So that's one thing you've got to get in there and do. Contact info, put the contact in there that you want, but definitely get that in. There is an open to work option within LinkedIn. I always put mine on. I'm not looking for work, so I put, board of directors, that kind of stuff. You definitely want to have this going. Now, what's interesting about this, we were talking about timely data, right? That's a best practice. Well, when I fill this out and I make the choice of recruiter or all LinkedIn members, when I turn that on, there is a timed value. Today, recruiters will pay more attention to it than they will 30 days from now. Because the recruiter is looking for accurate, timely data, you actually start going down the ranking list the longer you leave this on. So if you're using this, make sure you turn it off and turn it back on. If you're active job search, I would do it every 2 weeks. Put it on a schedule, turn it off, turn it back on, so you're always top of list, right? Otherwise, you're dropping down farther. And the reason they're doing that is if I turn this on one day and 90 days later, I just forgotten I already got a job. And now recruiters reaching out to me going, well, I see you're looking. They're not very happy when you say, well, I already landed something. They're like, well, why do you have open to work on, right? So LinkedIn knows that. LinkedIn respects that 65% of their business. So they descend you on the list the longer it's on. Refresh it, you'll always do better. So a lot of things within LinkedIn are going to be that way. And that's based on kind of knowing how LinkedIn functions. There's always that debate. Should I do recruiter only? Should I do, everybody? That's an individual choice. There are recruiters who like it. There are recruiters who hate it. There are people who like it. There's people who hate it. It's a personal choice. I find open to work, telling everybody works really, really well when you're graduating college. Really, really well when you're in an entry level. Maybe really well when you just want to let people know immediately, right? And then you might even turn it off back to recruiter only. Those are options. So there are times where it works. What I don't like about it is it does put that green banner into your picture, which to me, that doesn't need to be your lead branding, right? So I think sometimes you can use it that way. Now, one of the things in that, when you turn that on, it will give you the option to post about you being open to work. When you take the everybody option, take that post, because that's the one time that LinkedIn will try to get your post out to everybody in your network. Every other time, your posts are actually tested in an incremental release based on how much engagement you get on them, right? So this one will go out to everybody, customize it, don't use the defaults, throw a better picture in there. You can even use GIFs. If you have a series of pictures of you doing something. You can make a GIF. It's a great tool. And most people don't even know it. They don't even use it. So you can use it like a PR blast, let everybody know. And then you can make the decision whether you leave that on or whether you go to recruiter only at that point. But you get that really nice post. And I think it's a smart thing to use that way. So I'm going to pop down to the about section. I know we're moving along here and we're going to run out of time if we're not careful. A couple things about sections. The first 2-3 lines are critical to get someone to open it. Because what you see normally is this see more, right? If I don't get them excited in these first couple of lines, they're not going to ever hit see more. And they're not going to see what else I can offer, right? So really important, do this like a newspaper, right? When they read the title of the newspaper, they hook you. They make you want to read it. Start out that way. More people will get in here and read this. A couple of quick tips in here. When you're using bullets, you can use emojis. They stand out, right? I'm conservative in my emojis, so they're a little more business-like, but I use emojis. But what's interesting here is this bullet list. If you notice it, it's in descending order. This pattern is called a flying F. This was perfected by spammers, believe it or not. They found out when you put bullets not in order of importance, but in order of descending order, 95% of the people will read all the bullets. When they're staggered, short, long, long, short, short, long, only 14% of the people will read all the bullets. So that's why we do this. The other side to this, psychologically, if I had these all staggered, it would look a little messy. Psychologically, here somebody comes in, they don't know why, but they think I'm organized, whether I am or not, right? So that, again, there's this visual presentation that you can use little components like this to make that happen. And I always believe that you've got to have, you know, a CTA, right? A call to action. If you're looking for somebody who can do A, B, C, D, you know, let's have a conversation. And then you can incorporate in your contact. But what I advise here is make sure you make that contact outside of the standard format of that contact so it doesn't get scraped and you don't get spam. So +1 negative is not a phone format, but people would look at that and go, oh, US, right? And there's the rest of his phone, so I could copy that. I could make a call. Same thing, I parse the emails so they don't get spam. These have been up there for 15 years. I don't get spam from it. But somebody could copy that. They could take the spaces out and they could email me. So connectivity is really strong by doing this, and it's still safe in that process. So this box down here, your top skills. Think about LinkedIn being this huge database. One of the big sorts in the database is your skills, right? And you think about it, when you apply to jobs, they're looking, do you have these skills? So what LinkedIn has done here is they've given you an option to pick your top 5 and assign them to your about section. Don't skip that, because if you do, you drop in rankings. So you want to pick the top 5, but you will have an option in the experience section to assign more than, right? LinkedIn, about 3-4 months ago, took the 50 skills that we had, and they now have given us up to 100. That's a huge difference. For some people, it's too many. For others, it's not enough. You know, that's always a debate. But if you are applying to jobs and you notice, wow, I do have that skill, it's not in my skill category, I want to add that in. That's a smart thing to do. I look at people who are in coding, right? On the tech side, they'll have 100 programs they need to know. Each one of those is a skill. So for some people, it's not enough. For others, it's too much. But definitely find your top 5. And that's what LinkedIn has done here. And the ones you're assigning to your experience, what that's helping LinkedIn then tell the recruiter and tell the ranking system in search results is how many years of experience do you have? So if I had sales and I had it assigned to 5 positions and I count up the positions and the positions are 20 years, I've got 20 years of sales. So definitely assign the right ones to those positions. And there you can have as many as you like, up to 100. So you definitely want to do that. I do services provider. If you're in transition, if you've got specialties, you can join the LinkedIn service provider community. They will give you leads every day. So if you want to do a project, maybe you do, you build databases, right? That was your job before. You could do these here. You could set out kind of a shingle in this sense of all your things, and you could take those leads and maybe make some money in the transition. I've even had people join this service and become entrepreneurs by accident, right? Because the money was better and they had more flexible time. It is a good generator. You should look into service provider if you don't. It's a great program. Featured section. This is where you can bring in components of your profile if you have premium, or you can just bring in examples. If you think about LinkedIn, here's the difference between LinkedIn and a resume. You can augment it with a lot of new things, right? This is the new features I do. This would be my newsletter, that you can actually get a newsletter from LinkedIn, no charge. They'll manage everything, including the emailing process. It's a great way to kind of build that thought leadership, but bring those things into that featured section, because this is kind of your social proof. Great to bring in here. Now, I'm going to skip activity here. We might come back to it. Here's where things get critical in how do we fit within the database. Okay. So I'm going to go into the experience area. The first thing we're going to look at, and this is that database best practice of being organized, right? That's your title. We did the transition for the head of HR for Yahoo many, many years ago. He couldn't figure out why nobody on LinkedIn was finding him. Nobody was, recruiters weren't asking him, for the next big thing. And it was a big company at the time. I don't know what it is now. It was big at the time. His official title, the one he had on his business card, the one that HR could verify, was Cloud9 Navigator. Who knows what that is? Nobody, because nobody was searching for it. We changed that by typing in Chief Human Resource, and then I got a drop down, said officer. We selected that. He was like the number 4 person in the company. And then what we did when we changed that title, because that wasn't the one the company gave him, within the content down here, we started off with as the Chief Human Resource Officer, comma, internally known as the Cloud9 Navigator. I did this. So you're starting it off like a conversation. You're telling them the truth, the whole truth. If they went to verify, they would say, do you have a Chief Human Resource Officer internally known as the Cloud9 Navigator? Boom, you're in. If I tried to put that here, what would happen, drop-down box goes away. What LinkedIn is telling you right now is that market value filter doesn't exist in the LinkedIn database for searching. So you want to use whatever comes in that drop-down box. If you find, let's say 4 or 5 that, hey, they're all really close, go and do a job search with that one or the group of them, right? If one comes back and there's one job in the country, that's probably not a good market value filter. If another one comes back and there's 30,000 jobs in the country, that's a popular market value filter, right? As long as they represent what you do and you've got the internally known as, take the one that's going to bring you closer to where you need to be. Does that make sense? So within this, we've got a couple other areas. Most people don't fill out employment type. Within LinkedIn in a search, we're going to be ranked in this order. And you think about it, if I was looking for an employee, would a full-time employee be better than a seasonal if I need a full-time employee? Probably, right? So these are actually ranked. So if you select nothing, you're ranked as a seasonal. So you want to go in here and select it. One of the things when we are in transition, we have some options on LinkedIn. One of them is we can actually tell LinkedIn that we are in transition, right? The problem with that is it actually tells the database we're unemployed, which recruiters, retained recruiters, those are the ones who are paying those exorbitant fees. They want employed because companies are paying those recruiters to do a couple of things. And, they term the term of what you need to go find as a recruiter. They call it a purple squirrel, right? They're going to pay them really good money. It's anywhere from 10 to 50% of your first year salary is their bonus equivalency if they land you. Because it's so expensive and the company already has HR, it already has a recruiter internally, it already has an ATS system, because they're going to this extra expense, they're like, I want to tell you exactly what I want. You got to bring me that or nothing else. The number one definition of a purple squirrel is steal them away from the competition. If you're unemployed, you're not the competition. They can't even present you. And that's why a lot of recruiters won't talk to unemployed. You can, believe it or not, you can create your own position. If you're doing service provider, like I told you earlier, come up with a company name. You don't have to incorporate it. You can do a DBA at your local, probably tax office. You can get a DBA. Find one that nobody's using, that you can get a company page, build that company page out. It's just like building a profile. You can throw a logo in there, or you can throw your picture in there as a company logo, right? And build that page out. So then within the database, LinkedIn looks at that and says, wow, you're employed. I'm going to now offer you to those recruiters who want you. So it's a route around the database, and it's honest because you're telling them exactly what you're doing. I always look at this. If you're looking for a job, you're full-time, maybe full-time and a half, right? So select full-time, keep that ranked high. Anytime we type in a company, if we get these little building blocks, and I notice, I won't say anybody's name, but somebody here has got this, I know. If you get that little building block, basically what you're doing there is you're not linking to a company page that's official. So within the database, you become what's called gray data. And LinkedIn goes, well, maybe Robert was employed or maybe not, because we can't identify the company. If I search a little harder, maybe, type it a little differently, I'm going to get the logo pullover. That logo pullover tells the database that you were employed and you did work for a company that is a real company. And now LinkedIn's actually even verifying company pages. That just came out last week. Again, keep your Metroplex large. Hybrid, location type, on-site, hybrid, remote. These are critical, and they do place you in that ranking. If a recruiter's looking for someone who can do hybrid work or remote work, and you select those, you're going to be top of that list. If you select on-site, that's probably the most popular job title or need right now, is people who want to come into an office. Companies like that. I don't know why. But if you want to find the in-between, go to the hybrid, because it says you can do both. Right? That's important, because if a company's going to go remote, they don't want to have somebody who's only had on-site. If they're going to go on-site, they don't want to have somebody who's only remote. So hybrid's actually the easiest one to select, probably give you the most opportunity in those search processes, because it's always going to come up in either one of those searches. Dates, obviously important to have your start and end dates correct. You should have months in there. Make sure those are done. Here's where you assign your skills. So you can add skills. There's a really cool trick within LinkedIn. So as you're building skills, if today I'm a managing partner and tomorrow I want to be a CEO, right? If I put in here CEO and I select from the dropdown, right? So I'm in the filter. It's going to now suggest some new skills that maybe I didn't have, that it sees are owned by that new title. So it's a neat way to kind of figure out what skills you don't have already assigned. Now there would probably be more, but they're probably already covered in here. But I like the fact that you can kind of game that system for a moment to find out what those suggested titles are based on that title you put in. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to step back. misspelling managing, because most people do, right? That's the most misspelled title is manger. There's like 25 million of them on LinkedIn. So terrible, but it does happen. That's why taking that drop-down box could keep you out of that kind of problem. But that's what you want to do when building this out. Anytime you add media helps the presence, right? It helps the proof. I'm going to take you to a quick site that this is something that LinkedIn put together. They put it together for career counseling with large universities, and it's hidden. It's on the GitHub site. So it's linkedin.github.io// that is career-explorer. What this does when you go here is it grabs your profile information. And I always say, just do this little option here, skip down, because it tries to graphically explain what it's doing, and it's a mess. You enter in your Metroplex where you want to be, right? I don't know why it always defaults to food server, but that's what it is. Let's see. Let's jump that in. What it's going to do now is it's going to say, in viewing your profile, these are the things that we found. So these are the skills that a vice president of business would have based on LinkedIn's billion file system, right? So they're pretty accurate. There are differences, for industries and those kind of things. And then what LinkedIn's going to say, if you wanted to transition from your current position, mine is managing partner, to vice president of business, this is how popular that transition is. And these are the skills it sees you have. These are the ones it might see you don't have or need to work on, right? So it kind of gives you this little, here's your ones you need to work on. It gives you this transition component. So if you go back and you look at skills to build and go, well, I've got all those, make sure they're in your skills list, right? Put them in there. Make sure they're in your content, because this is huge. And you can go down here and it'll have other options. And it's kind of cool. It's a neat tool, kind of play with it. But know that that's out there on the GitHub. We can put that in the information below. That's a great way to kind of make sure we've got those skill checks. I'm going to jump out of here and move on.
Kevin, I know we're tight on time. Before you jump out, Wayne wants to know, what are your thoughts on using first person versus second person versus third person when creating summaries and writing up your experience?
If you think about what LinkedIn is supposed to be, as a networking site, right? If I go into a networking meeting and I say, well, Kevin Turner really likes this room, that's a little weird, right? If I say, I really like this room, that's fine. Think about it in the sense that the way things are positioned on LinkedIn is not the way you'd position your resume per se. They're positioned to make connectivity, to make that relationship, to make those 6 degrees of connection, right? So that you can find more people and more people can find you, but you want it to be inviting. So yeah, first person. Yeah. So that's how I would approach that. Sure. Interesting enough, and this is kind of weird, if you look at my profile, you notice in my first position in my volunteering area, I've actually got some unusual information. This is what Google used to pick up from LinkedIn when somebody would search for me. What LinkedIn did at the beginning of the year, they obfuscated our profiles. Our public profiles, you can only see very little. You can't see the information you used to see. So if you Google yourself now, you won't get pages of LinkedIn stuff on Google anymore about you. You'll get something that's sometimes a little odd. But if you put what you want Google to have in this section, right, and you note for them to index it, they'll end up with the right information on Google for you. And so that's what we've done here. That's why that's a little different. Getting into skills, know that within skills, you can do a couple things. You can actually reorder them. This is important to know because, and you just grab that little hamburger and move it up, right? So you can reorganize them. Always good to do because the top two are the ones that show. If anybody's going to give you a skill recommendation, they're going to do it on the top two and they probably won't go any further than that, right? Why is an endorsement important? If you think about LinkedIn, they're trying to put us in a ranking, right? If Robert and I both had LinkedIn Recruiter, and I've only got, you know, I don't think I have anybody saying I've got it. So I would be lower. And if Robert had it and he had 10 people who said he has LinkedIn Recruiter, then he'd be at the top of the list and I'd be lower. So the amount of endorsements helps us rank on a list for that skill set. The caveats here are if somebody who is highly endorsed for that skill also endorses you, that's like a multiplier, right? And think about this in the sense that if I say I've got LinkedIn Recruiter, that's just me saying it. If 10 other people say I have it, then LinkedIn can trust that more, right? It's social proof. And so that's why it's important to get your skills, but also get endorsements on your skills. You've got a group of almost 100 people today. If you know these people, start a skills party, right? Come to my profile, give me the skills you know I have. Don't give me ones you don't know. But if you know I've got it, give me those skills. I'll come back to your profile and I'll give you the skills I know you have. If I only know 5 of Robert's skills that I'm comfortable giving him, that's what I'm going to give. If Robert sees and he says, oh, Kevin's got 20 I know, so it might not always be even, but we do our best and we just kind of create these little skills parties. But what it does is it ramps that ranking up. So when somebody is looking for someone who does something in that skill area, you're going to be at the top of the list. Otherwise, if you leave it alone, you're probably going to fall towards the bottom. So really important to do. Let me get out of skills here. Now, I may have skipped a little higher here. There is one component, and I know that this is one that is highly discussed, and that is education. And education could also be licensing and certifications, those kind of things. But I'm going to go into education right now. The database on LinkedIn Education has changed in the last 3 years. This used to be like this. So if yours looks like that, that means you're in the old database. Nobody can find you for Bachelor of Business Administration. So you want to, first of all, look at that. You always, again, want to take from the drop-down box. That puts you in the filter. These are what the university agreed with LinkedIn, that these are the degrees they offer. So if your degree was a little bit different, but this is the one university says you have, if you use the one you remember, right, then it's not going to come up in a search. That's a problem. Same thing with the field of study. Take from the drop-down box as close as accurate as you can to get that right so that you are then viewed. Now, we talked about this database best practice of being complete and accurate. A lot of people are removing graduation dates because when I give you my graduation date, you know how old I am, right? And that is true. I probably know how old you are anyway, or I can estimate it, right? When we remove these, we have then incomplete data. So if I'm looking for somebody who has a Bachelor of Business Administrations, they're going to give me the ones that are complete data at the top and the incomplete data at the bottom. We're all human. Whenever we're given a ranking list, we focus at the top. We may never get down to the bottom where I have my no dates within there. So I always look at LinkedIn in the sense that you can either be included or excluded. If you take the dates off here, you're going to be pushed so far down the ranking, you're really excluding yourself from that degree or from that certification that you earned because you took the dates off, you didn't make it complete data, and that's pushing you down. I would rather be included with people doing a search for that, right? And then if they decide I'm too old because that's their issue, not mine, I'd rather not go to that interview because you're wasting time, right? If they have an age bias, are you going to convince them all of a sudden during an interview that they should forget their age bias? No. What you're going to do is you're going to end up burning time and money. Potentially, if you're employed and you're leaving your employer, that could be risk of your current job. Don't do it. Be straight up and take who wants to take you, right? Go where they celebrate you, not where they, push you down. And that's a big piece of this. By being this open, you're going to get to the right places as opposed to the wrong places and spend the wrong amount of time. So do fill this out. I'd rather be included in those who want to find me than excluded by everybody. So it's important to do that. And I know it's controversial. You can also assign your skills to your education. We're on the hour and I could keep going. So Robert, you tell me where.
So Kevin, I think we'll start to wind it down, actually. I do have 2 questions I want to ask you from the audience. These come up at every LinkedIn session we do. An anonymous attendee asks, do you have any hints or tips for people who have long career breaks?
Yes. And again, one of those is if you did any, let's say, volunteering, you can use the volunteering in your experience area, right? So you pull that volunteering piece over. If you spent time writing a book, right? You could bring that over. You could create a business page for the book. So there's ways of closing the gap. One of the easiest ways, if you have a gap, is going into this section here under business. It's all the way at the bottom here. Create a business page. You can actually create a business page. That will set it up within the database as not a gap. And that business page could be anything. It could be, chief family officer, while raising my kids. You can get creative with it, but what it doesn't do is doesn't eliminate you out of the database in considerations. That make sense?
It does to me. And then my other question is from Charlene. This comes up quite a bit. And she gives a long example of what's going on. But essentially, she's working in a current industry that is not her desired industry. So she used to work in an industry. She wants to get back into that industry, but she's currently working in a different industry. And she feels that her LinkedIn profile is actually doing more harm than good. So any tips or tricks or suggestions on someone who's changing into a past industry or even changing into a new industry? Any thoughts there?
Well, absolutely. The thing that LinkedIn will do is current company will always set your industry preference unless you go reset it. So you can go in and pick a different industry in that sense by, well, actually you can't anymore. Pardon me. It's going to be forced to that last option because they just removed industry out of here. I don't know. Let's see if it'll take it. This is the one that's assigned to the profile. Yeah, it will. So just you go in there and you can select it.
Yeah.
So within this edit part of your intro, it's going to pull the industry from the company you are currently associated with or the last company you're associated with if you've left. You can go in and then update it. So you could change the industry for where you want to go.
Yeah. So folks, we've gone, Kevin started speaking around 2:05. It is now 3:07. So we've gone the full hour. Let's give Kevin a big virtual round of applause for a wonderful presentation. We got to about 90% of the questions and comments. So I am good to end it here. Look for an email from me tomorrow with a link to this recording, a link to a feedback survey, a link to upcoming job seeker programs on Mondays at 2, information about Kevin, including his LinkedIn profile and his YouTube account. And I'll also have people will be able to save the chat through the recording. So you'll get that all tomorrow. Kevin, any last words before we wrap it up?
I just appreciate the opportunity. I hope it's helped Anybody here, you're welcome to follow me. You're welcome to ask questions. I post a lot. I do spend time with people in the DMs as well. And I do have a lot of this stuff covered on YouTube. There's no charge. It'll go deep. One of my favorites is creating a favorite content creator filter that you then bookmark that will control your feed. So you're not wasting time. You can get exactly who you want in your feed, even if it's companies. So that's, I think, a good one to go jump right into as far as some of the videos that are on that site.
Yeah, Kevin's a must follow on LinkedIn. Subscribe to him on YouTube. Get his newsletter. A lot of great content. So thank you all so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week. Thanks again, Kevin.
Thanks,
Bye.
Robert. Take care.
You too.